really simple, seamless, powerful, easy. Very small, but it's changing the way we teach and how students learn.
It's also been interesting when people come into UA92 to say, oh, why are we not doing it that way? And sort of spreading that way of doing things to other universities.
You've disrupted a lot of HE, but you've done it from the point of this is what your clients want, your students want. And I think you can't ask better than that from that sort of aspect. Technology is revolutionising higher education. In this episode, we will explore how University Academy 92 has leveraged the use of technology to unlock the full potential of their students. Welcome to Empowered. I'm Ricky Brown, an Apple Professional Learning Specialist at Sync. Today, I'm joined by Aaron Saxton, Director of Disruptive Learning, and Dan Havercroft, Digital Skills Trainer from UA92. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
So let's start this off with a very simple question. How is technology transforming higher education? And I'll ask you first, Aaron.
Well, please call me Sax, as everybody does, Ricky, if you don't mind.
No problem at all.
And let's be really upfront about the state of affairs globally in terms of how technology is revolutionising how people interact, how we travel, how we bank, how we date, how we learn. Even today, I'm not name dropping here, but I came in my Tesla and a bit of autopilot on the way over to the studios today, I think. And for that idea of automation and technology empowering people to ingest and learn in their own ways, and ultimately as well, how it's providing different means and modes of learning, and then the revolution of the internet, how that's really changed how we can share content, deliver remote learning, do our assessments. It is quite fundamentally, it's changed our lives and the outcomes of technology for here onwards and forever.
So as you said, it's changing a lot about not only your lives, but with higher education, it's changing what the students are going into. Do you want to add anything more to that, Dan?
I think the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about sort of transformation in tech in higher education is sort of the change we've had since COVID, and how sort of COVID brought on a sort of forced change in higher education. So sort of prior to COVID, things were still very traditional, whereas very quickly universities had to adapt to online teaching, things like Teams and WebEx, and the way that they deliver completely changed. So I think that, COVID has played a massive role in sort of where we are now compared to where we were 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's really accelerated the adoption of remote learning and technologies out there, and the expectation of education has now changed. And we're seeing a huge shift, actually, quite a bizarre shift, that lots of young people who obviously were paying for education, there's a really high expectation of the quality of delivery when it is face-to-face. Certainly we find that on our apprenticeship program, and then the technology we use around those sessions to really enhance the learning of these future digital entrepreneurs.
Yeah, just to add to that, I was saying the sort of way that we deliver has also changed, like you were saying. So whilst a lot of delivery prior to COVID was face-to-face, as with a lot of companies that can now implement flexible working as such, we can also implement flexible learning. And we found, a massive sort of improvement in morale with our sort of boot camps and apprenticeship programs by implementing a hybrid learning model. So sort of that ability to change how we deliver has been massive, really.
And I think that what you've said there, that hybrid learning model is what I think that University 92 have actually implemented different to a lot of the other universities, because it's allowed you to actually use all of that learning you had from COVID, use the technology to not only enhance the learning, the instruction that you're getting, but also it will actually help the students actually recap on that learning and actually develop themselves.
Absolutely. I think University Academy 92 was in quite a unique place because we were only sort of live and delivering to students for I think maybe 9 months before COVID hit. So it's not like we had a sort of drastic change, and we were probably in a luckier position to the majority of higher education institutes because we were so new and we had that ability to implement it quicker. But we've certainly seen, the ability to record sessions and then students go back and sort of revisit that learning at a later date, where you prior to COVID wouldn't have had that in a traditional lecture style setting. Speaking to a lot of students, that's something that's massively benefited their education. So,
yeah, and I think it's worthwhile actually, as part of context here, like we talk about University Academy 92 and UA 92 and why were we founded in 2019 and under the unique DNA that we have in terms of being innovative and bleeding edge, and where has that passion come from? And it is worthwhile noting that UA 92 was founded on some incredible principles with some incredible role models. We've got the class of 92, arguably, for any football fan out there, red or not, by the way, of Manchester. They are arguably the greatest students to come out of any academy on this planet. The likes of Gary Neville, Nicky Butt, Ryan Giggs, Phil Neville, Paul Scholes, and David Beckham. Obviously part of that cohort, but he's doing his own thing in the States. Leave him to it. So the class of 92, almost spearheaded by Gary Neville. So, who's a massive entrepreneur across GM and a massive investor in businesses and property and young people, said, you know what? Education is archaic in the very nature of what it does and how it's delivered. And arguably at higher education, he questioned, is the model fit for purpose? As a business owner and an entrepreneur, and we've all seen him on television, Sky Sports, Dragon's Den, The Overlap, we've seen him everywhere, haven't we? He understands business and he knows what he needs. And he said, higher education isn't delivering what we need. Firstly, we need a curriculum that's fit, that meets businesses. Businesses should be leading the objectives, the principles, the underlying framework of what a specification, what education should look like in the classroom. So our employers are a critical part of ensuring that all of our undergrad degree programs, all of our apprenticeship programs, all of our bootcamp programs are really underpinned by industry-leading partners, whether that's your Syncs, whether that's your Disneys out there and Microsofts and so forth. We have a variety of employers that feed into that curriculum. There's another part of this story as well. And what's more important, skills, knowledge, or those passions, or those behaviours, those characteristics? And, what Gary Neville will openly say in the class of 92 under the great leadership and mentorship of Sir Alex Ferguson is, it's not just what you kick and how you kick and your ability on the pitch, it's what's up here and what's in here, what's in the heart, that ability to be a great team player, pick yourself up when times are low, being able to rally a team, understanding how to communicate and get the best out of everybody, understanding yourself, understanding what failure is and how to move forward. So a huge part of every education academic program we deliver, and a 92 program underpins that, is around your character. Who are you? Because it's your certification that will get your foot in the door. But when you're sat in front of an employer, it's you, your character, your energy, your passion, your willingness to grow is why people will employ you. And then just to really underpin our incredible academic curriculum across the board, Lancaster are the other half of our 50% shareholders of our university, and Lancaster being one of the top 10 academic universities in the UK, really give us that academic excellence, the outstanding quality across our provision, and we lean into them so we know what should academia really look like, and how do all people need to understand the science of education, the pedagogy of teaching. What should the outcome of a certification really feel like and enable people to really achieve their dreams? So that's the underpinning part of UA 92. And then leading into that, what Dan has touched on is around We started in 2019, and with those principles at the core ingredients is we need an ecosystem of technology that underpins everything we do around, whether that's the Office suite, the Apple ecosystem, that's really that connectivity, so it's seamless for no matter whether you're a lecturer, whether you're in one of our professional services, whether you're a student, you can embed and engage in all of those ecosystems seamlessly to make education a simple step forward.
Dan, when you actually started off University in 92, and we've had a good synopsis there from Sax, what did you do? What was the thought process with the technology?
So I've got quite a unique point of view on UA92 because I've done quite a few roles there. So when I started, I was the digital services manager. My role was to come in, manage the digital services team and look after the infrastructure, the hardware, software deployment, management of that, support desk. So quite a broad role really. And I was very much thrown in at the deep end because as I started, Sax and the SLT team were writing a bid from the Office for Students for £2 million to build what we wanted to call the Digital Academy. So I was very much thrown in. We won this bid, and it was everyone's going now. We've got to move. We've got to have this money spent in 3 months. So my role very quickly became: here's a load of money. Go and spend it on the right infrastructure and the right technology for UA92.
Not a bad job to have.
Which isn't a bad job, really. Tech is my passion, and being told you've got a load of money to spend on it isn't a bad thing. So there was quite a few sort of projects and little bits of infrastructure that we had to get right first, and sort of decisions that had to be made. So, for example, complete Wi-Fi rekit, because as we approached the Digital Academy project, we wanted to make sure that as Sax has alluded to, the connectivity for everybody, whether you're staff, student, visitor, whatever, is suitable and works and is reliable, which is the biggest thing that we see. So we wanted to develop an infrastructure and a network infrastructure that was Wi-Fi first. And then as well as that, having to plan the technology for the Digital Academy around that. So we'd spent a good couple of weeks chatting with suppliers and trying to work out what was going to be the right fit. So we've got a partnership with Microsoft. We'd had a chat with those guys as to see, what can we supply, the management of this kit. And by chance, we ended up having a conversation with Sync in Manchester, obviously an Apple reseller. And it sort of tickled a part of my brain. I was like, I hadn't necessarily considered using Apple Kit. And as we had that conversation with them, we had a conversation with our account managers about how we manage it and how we deploy it. And it very quickly became that sort of some of the newer Apple Kit, especially with these M1 processors, they were brand new at the time, was going to make my life a lot easier when it came to management and deployment. As we were looking at purchasing this kit, we'd come to the decision that we're actually going to go and buy 100 Mac Minis, and we're going to manage them all in Jamf. And I'm so glad that was a decision we made, because the management of that kit, it made my life, a lot easier. Now, to sort of jump ahead a bit in the story, my role transitioned. I've been working on a web design business on the side for the last couple of years, and the opportunity arose for me to go and do that sort of full time. But I still very much enjoy and I'm very passionate about the education side and how we do things at UA92, especially on our apprenticeships and bootcamp projects led by Sax. So my role transitioned to be 2 days a week at UA92 as a digital skills trainer. Right. So I'd gone from one side on the infrastructure and the management side to then training and teaching using the kit that I deployed. So I've seen it from both angles. And the kit that we deployed with Mac Minis, monitors, wireless first infrastructure has really allowed me to plan some really quite interesting sessions that I hadn't been able to plan before, or using what I would class as traditional HE kit, because the technology that we deployed gave us the ability to be a lot more agile with how we use it. So going on to that now, I can now take my sort of experience as a business owner and how I would train, what I would want to see from students. And I can plan, sort of engage in agile sessions with this technology, sort of with industry in mind. So I've come at it from quite a few different angles.
And I think that's really interesting. I mean, Sax just told us about the story about Gary Neville and what is actually the purpose for what UN 92 is, and to an extent, you embody that purpose. You're going from like what you were doing to creating your own company to then coming back and actually helping all of the students there to actually come through and learn from you. It's that passion that's driving there, and you've got to have the right tech in the hands, don't you? You've got to have the right tech. There's no point in saying, right, okay, well, actually, you know what, we're a university, so we've got to have this. You've got to have industry standard, don't you?
Yeah, and I think just on that point, what I found quite interesting, and one of the reasons I was hired at UA 92 was because I have no background in higher education. I never went to university. So ironically, working as the digital services manager was my first taste of higher education. And in my first couple of weeks, I'd gone round and I'd visited a couple of other universities and I'd spoken to people. And, I didn't quite realise, and Sax mentioned it before, that higher education, can be quite archaic. You get a lot of people who are stuck in this cycle of, we still use blackboards, or at best we use interactive whiteboards. A lot of universities, in the majority of their studies, are quite archaic with the technology they use. And I think being able to come in as someone who's passionate about tech and had no idea how it previously looked, I think I was able to come in and say, well, why aren't we doing it better? Why aren't we doing it differently? Why aren't we doing it right? And I can tell you, we are, having gone round to other universities and spoken to people, there's not a lot of universities that are embracing sort of more modern tech, with wireless first, Macs, the management of all of the software. So I think being able to come in and do that as sort of, was a good learning point for me, but it's also been interesting when people come into UA 92 to say, oh, why are we not doing it that way? And sort of spreading that what's the word? Way of doing things to other universities and higher education institutes.
Ricky, I think and I love the word. You talk about being archaic, but I almost think it's tradition. I think and I hope you don't mind me saying there is something very special in British education about tradition, and there's nothing wrong with tradition, but tradition shouldn't hamper or stifle innovation. And I think what you find in a lot of academic institutions is, because we've always done it this way, why should we change it? And then you get stuck into this rut. And I think having somebody like Dan and obviously our embodied values is actually, why should we just use Microsoft and Surfaces and traditional methods of technology and how we connect them? Let's go Apple Macintosh. Let's take on a new form of technology that actually enables new opportunities that nobody foreseen. We certainly saw it in terms of the power and opportunity. But even little things for us, it may seem quite low key and small key to some individuals, but we love using the terminal on a Mac. It's like, for us, a little Linux terminal in many ways, where our students, we do a lot of cloud delivery in our DevOps programs, and it means our students can SSH in remotely into their fantastic cloud environments directly from an Apple Mac terminal. Really simple, seamless, powerful, easy. It's very small, but it's changing the way we teach and how students learn.
And I think the few words I can just pull out there, simple and reliable, are the two words I talk about. It's got to be simple and reliable, and it's got to be the way that students learn. And the way that students would walk out and go, actually, do you know what, I've got one of these at home as well. And,
can I also, sorry, jump in there? Can I say
ahead.
It's not how industry do it, as well as what students learn, but it's also, this is how it's done in industry.
Absolutely.
Which is critical.
Yeah.
It is, because this is what you're preparing your students for, is really that world of work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you want to give them that advantage over other people, or at least lift them up. Because again, so a lot of your demographic is quite low, isn't it? Am I right in that?
Yeah, I think one thing I suppose I hadn't really mentioned is I think I think on my own journey, I grew up locally in Human Moss Side, and you sort of think of the demographic and socioeconomic background of lots of people who lived in the area, and the idea of university was not even an aspiration, or isn't. It's certainly for many of my peers and my friends. So one thing that the class of '92 wanted to do is break down these barriers to education, whether that's financially, whether that's status, whether that's belief or confidence. So we at UA 92, we deliberately, through Director of Disruptive Learning, is we want to disrupt the model, and we want to make education accessible for all, and everybody should believe that further education can be and will be for them. It's our duty at UA 92 to ensure that we create all of the relevant support mechanisms. Access to digital poverty is also a challenge. That we're providing the right access to devices through programs, right funding, right bursaries, right support from businesses. So every young person, young or old actually, no matter their background, their socioeconomic background, they can achieve. So we're incredibly passionate about that. And the work we did with Sync to enable some of that has been fantastic, because I suppose one thing we haven't talked about is with all of our digital partners is, I'm a very simple man, believe it or not. And what I mean by that is that actually helping each other and being kind to each other, listening to each other, understanding each other's problems, and then helping each other, that is what teamwork and partnership really means. I think there are far too many transactional partnerships out there. That's how societies run, and for me, that is not how we want to run. So one thing that I loved about Sync, recognizing them as friends and partners, and they want to help. They want to understand our mission, want to understand why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and then, rightly so, provide the right technology to enable us to reach those aspirations, which has been fantastic.
And I think you are right. It is that bit of why. What is your purpose? Why are you doing what you're doing? And you have flipped a lot of these. I mean, I love your title, Disruptive Learning and stuff. But you've flipped everything on its head to actually really think about the student first. Not this is the traditional way. This is what we've been doing. Can I ask the next question? Because it seems like you've changed so much. But what's next for UA 92, Dan?
Oh, really good question. For us and for my role as a trainer, we're focusing on sort of listening to our employee partners, where the gaps are. We speak often in Greater Manchester about this digital skills gap, and the Greater Manchester Combined Authority sort of tasked to reduce that skills gap. There's a big market for people in technical roles. So we've mainly been spending a lot of time looking at what the employee partners and what the industry want, and then sort of providing courses, boot camps, apprenticeships, programs just around that to help solve that gap. So at the minute, whilst we've been offering a range of sort of boot camps, 16-week courses, and mainly one DevOps style apprenticeship to create sort of holistic developers and systems engineers, we're seeing a big push in the minute for data analysts. As we progress into a world where we get more data, no matter what role you're in, you get data now, whether that's in spreadsheets, in databases, just in web portals, whatever it is, everyone is now working with more data. So I think our next steps in terms of where we're heading is developing courses to support the industry with that. Now, obviously, the technology that we've deployed and the infrastructure that we have at UA 92 is what is allowing us to do that. We don't have to have this long process of, right, we want to develop this course or this program. How do we deliver it? Because we've had that right infrastructure in place, and I don't know if you'd agree, we've got the ability to move fairly quickly with these things now. And yeah, whilst it's, the focus on that is student first, having the right technology and the right infrastructure in place allows us as an organisation to be far more agile than some sort of similar setups around us.
Yeah, I agree completely, Dan. And you've done it. He's an incredible young man here in terms of really evolving our programs from, helping us evolve from DevOps into CyberOps into SecOps, moving into the data space. We're looking at AI, so we've got some really cool products and educational, programs that will really help leverage people into the modern digital roles out there. But I think one thing I found in the technology we have in play at UE92 is, and it may sound really simple again, but the confidence in it being able to deliver our future aspirations. That seems really simple. But how many places do you go to and you think, oh no, is the Wi-Fi going to hold up? Or has this got enough compute power to deliver this program? And have we got the right support in our partners? Will it help us? And for us, all of that, we can just park that to the back of the brain, think forward, innovate, execute, deliver.
I know, that's nice. And there's just something you've just said about our confidence and it I mean, I've visited UE92 and it is an amazing place, but I can just think that for some teachers that might look like it's a really difficult thought process to come away from the traditional to this new, quick-moving university.
I think it is. I've worked quite closely with our computer science, obviously being a techie, our computer science department. And that's certainly something that we've noticed. A lot of what I would class as traditional academics that have done computer science beforehand, high-level computer science. The way that our courses work is that you don't do a 3-year course and then have a finals at the end of it. You work 4 modules a year for 6 weeks, and at the end of that 6 weeks you deliver a project, and that is how that module is assessed. So there's no end of year exams. That's one of the biggest reasons it's so appealing to people who go, exams aren't for me. It's a different route. But a lot of people that we have seen, it's been a tough mindset change to go from I stand up and I deliver this lecture on X topic to actually, right, you're now more of a sort of classroom style teacher, which is what sort of really benefits a lot of our students, because you have that one-on-one support. You're not just sat there listening to something. But the academic team we've got now are fantastic, and it's certainly speaking to a lot of them. A lot of them now would struggle to go back the other way, because they've come from this sort of traditional style, what they knew, to this model where actually the students, you can see how engaged they are because they have to deliver on a week-by-week basis. You get to see them every day, 4 days a week for 4 hours, so that your contact time with them is far higher. And a lot of them now, they just say, I'd struggle to go back and stand in front of a big whiteboard and point at zeros and ones on the screen. So it's funny to see that. Yes, it is tough to go one way sometimes, but it's now even tough to go the other way.
Ricky, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Wasn't expecting that, were you?
No.
So why does the school term start in September?
Because it's just tradition. It's tradition. It always has. But I know where this is I know where this is going. So I'm going to pass it on. Why would you say it shouldn't?
Well, and why do we not challenge that? Like, it's the most bizarre thing in society, and almost like we've become a society of almost sheep, where it happens in September, so we'll all just follow suit. And then, guess what? If I fall ill in the year or at university, or my life changes and I need to take a pause in my life, or I want to raise a family and pause, actually, you know what? I've got to wait 12 months before it starts again. So the reason for the September start is because of the harvest. Early 19th century, I think, when the harvest ended, like everybody could crop the wheat from the fields, they could go to school. When's the last time you harvested anything, Ricky?
Can't remember.
My point exactly. So for us, it's about challenging that model which Dan's alluded to in terms of the multiple entry points. So 4 within a year. Every 6 weeks, as Dan's alluded to. So if you want to take a break, have a pause, that is doable. You want to start in, whether it be September or November or in the new year or in April, those chances are available, and there are also accelerated options. Another question I would ask you is, why do you have to stop learning in April, May?
Absolutely. And why? And to an extent, I would say, and I'm going to take it to the K-12, not as a certain thing. I would say that we have a national curriculum that says you should learn this by this year, but if you're advanced, you should be able to learn whatever you want, whenever you want, and however you want. You should be able to. It is your choice, isn't it?
And I think we are. I think society's moving into quite an interesting shift. If you don't mind me sort of making a bit of a point, is that it's a very challenging economic environment at the moment. I think we'd all agree globally, and certainly nationally. And, you know, you've only got to look at interest rates, the Bank of England, and you know how the poverty gaps is widening, and so education is actually now a choice. You know, it's become not quite a commodity, but it's something that, you know, it's a significant investment, and as a result of that, and it's expensive, very expensive. So we're actually leaning, rightfully so, to our customers, the students, who are paying for this service, as you just alluded to, Ricky. And actually, if I want to do my degree in 2 years, why shouldn't that be a choice? And it is a choice for a number of our students. So rather than spending 3-4 years in education, 2 years, it enhances their opportunity of moving into employment, earning money, and progressing forward in life.
And I think that's that. Like you said, you've disrupted a lot of HE with regards what the traditional practice is, what the traditional entry points are, what you traditionally do in a classroom, but you've done it from the point of this is what your clients want, your students want, and I think you can't ask better than that from that sort of aspect. So one thing that's in my mind with all of this changes that you've made and adapting to the students' needs and so onwards is the future. Technology is moving so fast. How are you going to keep up? And I mentioned before what's next for you in IT2, but what is that? What is the technologies or certain things that are coming across that's exciting for you in IT2?
I think the launch of the Apple Vision Pro was inevitably sort of an industry changer, as it is when, you know, any of the big players release a new piece of technology. We at UA92 we get a lot of international students, and one of the first sort of journeys that we embarked on with the metaverse and with this augmented, you know, AR VR technology, is bringing it really away from the technology, but using the technology to go back to connecting human beings. We've got, I remember sitting with a student that had come over from a remote village in India, and he was asking me questions. I was like, well, I'm from Manchester. I'm a United fan, so right round the corner from Old Trafford. You know, where are you from? And he put on this headset and was like, this is where I'm from. And using that technology as a tool to, you know, really connect again is we found has been really important and really vital. And engaging students with studies, if they feel engaged with the technology, they're far more inclined to learn. It's not there yet where we can sort of get rid of everything else, but it's certainly a path that we're on.
But I think it's still that choice, isn't it? It's this choice that students take. But from what you're saying here, you could take UA92 to anywhere. And you're just opening up the doors to a choice of when, where, how students want to learn. I mean, that is really disrupting education and the HE, which is brilliant.
It is. Well, thank you again. You know, it is a big, bold step. And I think, again, just the point you make there is this isn't about what we want. This is about what our learners want. And, you know, they are now rightfully so commanding. And I think, you know, the world, a very different place. I think Dan touched on this, the COVID and how that's changed all of our lives forever and forevermore. But I think we need to really capitalise on the positive outcomes that COVID really brought to us in society, and that, you know, that actually remote aspects of life still can add the same value in the right way. And, you know, everything from my perspective, in terms of everything from sustainability and access and global presence, are things that VR and augmented reality can bring to the new education system moving forward.
I mean, that's brilliant, Sax. Thanks very much, and you've just pulled everything together there, which is brilliant. So, I want to try and start bringing this podcast together, and what I'd really like to ask you is just a couple more questions. So the first one is, what is one success and one challenge that you've actually faced in your career with UA 92? So we'll start with you, Dan.
Yeah, I think something I've touched on before was one of the biggest challenges I had was challenging that traditional higher education, way of operating. I came in as somebody that hadn't touched higher education, and it was certainly a challenge to try and convince some people that were used to higher education to embrace new technology, and then to sort of make that the success. Once we'd finally got that over and we got the kit in, and we could sort of start to demonstrate why we'd chosen that and why that was, the way we'd committed. Certainly a good success is seeing the flip side of that now with the lecturers and the academics and even the support staff going, wish I'd have had this when I was at university. So,
and the same question to you, Sax.
A challenge in our system is changing this idea that actually it isn't just about traditional undergrad, masters, postgrad, that there are other mechanisms of learning and products and services and educational outcomes that enable people to develop and progress forward, that just because it's not got a degree profile next to it shouldn't be devalued.
No.
And in many ways it probably has more value. So that's been, I don't know if I blended both there. So that's been, I suppose, our success is implementing digital boot camps and apprenticeship programs, and our challenges in our system getting those into play.
I mean, definitely that challenge that you just said there is to an extent changing the educational landscape to an extent. Is what is fit for purpose, and is educational fit for purpose? And I think that's another question. But one last question to you guys. What would be your top tip if there is another higher educational establishment, university, that wants to actually go down the lines of implementing technology into their university? What would you say to them?
Biggest one for me is just question why, if something doesn't seem right, why is it always been done this way? Don't be afraid to challenge that and say, yeah, we've always done it this way, but actually technology's moved on. There are potentially a much better way to do things. So challenge that norm. I think that's where UA 92's got a lot of its success from. So that'd be mine.
Well, I would be quite a little bit controversial here, and I think for far too long in our academic system, we've listened to the academics. You see it on the news, don't you? This academic from this university is going to tell you about this piece of technology. Who decided that they're the expert? Why? Like, we know, me and myself and Dan, for us, and we've just today, as you know, we've been on the phone with the Hook Group THG, one of our big employer partners, as part of our apprenticeship program. Now, me and Dan arguably know that we are not the Jedi Masters in technology. We're okay. We do a good job, a decent job. But you know what? Who are the real experts? Are the CIOs at the Hook Group, the SecOp leads, the infrastructure leads that are looking after billions of pounds worth of global infrastructure. They are the experts, not us, just because we've got a certificate, unfortunately, in X. And for us, actually, so for any universities and academic institutions, we need to be listening to certain our employers as the critical key experts and customers at telling us what and how we should be doing it and what they need in terms of skills for their businesses. That, for me, is the biggest shift that will change and revolutionise academia in this country and beyond.
Wow, it's a simple answer. I mean, I think that the conversation that we've had here and your title about disruptive learning and what UA 92 does with your higher education is just phenomenal. It is phenomenal where we're going, and hopefully you carry on doing that change, that disruption that you're doing, and hopefully we can actually look at disrupting the educational sphere and making sure that it is fit for purpose, and questioning what we're going on. I'm just going to say thank you very much to you guys. Thanks very much, Sax. Thanks very much, Dan, for joining us today. And I hope you've enjoyed it today with higher education and the disruptive forces of UE92.